Oh, you're watching me fly. Well, I don't mind. I always liked an audience. I'm Harriet Quimby, the first licensed female pilot in the United States and the first woman to fly the English Channel.
I know I was difficult to understand. You could certainly say I was a woman ahead of my time, but also a woman of my time. In 1912, I really didn't fit any known category. Bird woman? What was that? But that was just part of me. I was, myself, my own creation. And I suppose you could say I was my own destruction. My hand on the stick, I steered from start to finish.
Yes, I liked attention. In 1900, age 25, I began working in San Francisco as a photographic model, actress, and drama critic. My best friend was actress Linda Arvidsson, who later married D.W. Griffith, now known as the father of modern cinema. That's D.W. on the right, with friends you might recognize. I wrote 7 screenplays for him, even acted in a film. But I wanted a wider audience and found it in New York City, writing for a national magazine, Leslie's Weekly.
Then in 1909, I wrote a story that changed my life. It was called A Japanese Aeronaut to Startle the World. Aeronaut. Pilot. A birdman. That was what we called pilots back then. Well, I decided to be a bird woman. 1910, the Belmont Park race in New York City. The prize? $10,000. Big money back then. The winner? John Massant. John, I said, teach me to fly.
He considered my request absurd, but I was persistent, and finally he agreed to let me take lessons at a flying school he intended to open.
But in December, in New Orleans, John Massant crashed and died. His brother Alfred opened the school, the Massant Aviation School in Hempstead Plains, New York, the following May, 1911. I approached my editor and said, I want to write a story about learning to fly. He stared at me as if I were ready for the booby hatch. But Leslie's Weekly paid, and I got to go. Every evening I drove my little red roadster. Oh yeah, I was one of the first licensed women drivers out to a hotel near the airfield. And each morning I drove to the airfield. By the hangar, the students would be setting chairs on the grass. There was one other woman, Matilda Massant, John and Alfred's younger sister, smaller than me and full of fun. Matilda and I and 5 young men soon sat facing a most forceful Frenchman, André Huppert. We called him the Professor. He didn't know what to call me. I registered under an assumed name and wore this. If I allowed another journalist to learn of my lessons, that might stop me from becoming truly famous. So I sat there in my veil as the professor began explaining aerodynamics and the components of an aeroplane. Rudimentary. Most planes only had a control stick and rudder pedals. There were no brakes, and only advanced planes had adjustable wing flaps, altimeters, or airspeed indicators. No. Planes were crude, noisy, and dangerous. What you learned on the ground helped you stay in the air. We learned to take a plane apart and reassemble it. By the 3rd week, a snoopy writer discovered who I was and ran a story. So the veil was off. It had to come off anyhow, after practicing in a flight simulator. A wingless fuselage bolted to the hangar floor. We began grass cutting. Now we were actually in a plane, but its wings were stubby and couldn't rise high or stay up long. You'd sit in the plane at one end of the airfield and the mechanic would spin the prop, then jump out of the way and the plane would start down the field. Then you'd pull back on the stick and you'd feel yourself lift right up like a horse jumping a fence, and you'd feel yourself rising, hanging there a few moments before the plane would fall, hit the grass, and speed forward. Then you'd pull back again and once more the plane would rise like a horse, galloping, leaping, and galloping again. Anyhow, I learned to climb, do figure eights, bank to the right and left, and of course I practiced going straight. Straight, though, was more like this. 32 lessons over 3 months. Then on August 1st, 1911, 2 judges from the Aeronautics Club of America watched me navigate 5 figure eights around 2 poles, then land near a white circle, and I was awarded my license. My God, I was happy. In front of the students and judges, well, for a moment I lost my composure. And I was glad, too, when Matilda won her license the next day. Glad, I'll admit, that I, not she, was first. My Leslie's Weekly articles created quite a stir. Some people applauded them, and some thought I was crazy. But all of them had noticed me, and I had done what I set out to do. Now I wanted a plane. That required money, $5,000 to $6,000. The quickest way to earn it was by flying, so I started piloting the Massant planes at exhibitions. Then I received a great offer. The Massant International Aviators were going to Mexico on exhibition, and Matilda and I were asked to join.
I said, "Sí, vámonos." We flew all over that hot, dry country.
1912 came, and with it, a promotion at Leslie's. I was made aviation editor. Nice photo. Many men tried to meet me after that photo ran. One succeeded. He was a balloonist. Hot air balloons, even owned a factory where he made them. A friend of the Wright brothers. A man who feared nothing. His name? Leo Stevens.
I hired Leo as my manager. To earn money, I had to stay in the public eye, so Leo made the obvious suggestion. Do what no woman had done. Fly the English Channel.
I knew I could do it. This would not be like flying over the grandstands at county fairs. No. Instead, it would be 22 miles of open water between England and France. The first to fly it was Louis Blériot, a Frenchman, in 1909. Blériot manufactured some of the most famous monoplanes in the world. By now, I had my purple suit, my lovely plum costume. A jumpsuit, mauve satin lined with soft wool, buttons under the arms, drawers in at the waist. The skirt gathers into leggings which fit in my boots. The hood, goggles, gauntlets. A dashing costume, wouldn't you agree? All right then, the channel. There was only one right way to do it. Visit Louis Blériot, obtain his advice and one of his planes. Leo and I sailed for France. Of course, I didn't tell my readers that. They would not have approved. I also took some lady friends. Linda Arvidson Griffith was one of them.
In Paris, Leo and I met Louis Blériot.
Louis, a hearty Frenchman with a drooping mustache whose body was so twisted from airplane crashes that his suits needed extensive alterations.
Blériot agreed to build and sell me a 70-horsepower monoplane for $5,000. In the meantime, he loaned me a 50-horsepower model, which we took to England.
And then came the rain. Days of it.
Finally, though, it was time to go.
Let's take off, shall we? 5:39 a.m. Dawn is breaking. Light spreading across the sky. The propeller spins, white smoke lifts from the engine, that noise, that engine roar. I give it more fuel and louder as I pull back on the throttle. Then the men release the tail and I and my little plane, 27 feet long of wood, wire, and canvas, a single wing extending to either side of me. We lurch forward, rushing over the field and into the air and higher. Quickly, I try not to breathe too deeply in the rush of my own emotion because I must save myself now. Throttle my glee as we pass over Dover Castle, then Dover's white cliffs, then over the water now, spreading far ahead, seemingly endless gray and cold. I know it is so cold and silent beneath me. The English Channel. But my plane flies well. No backfires, misfires, sudden tilting of wings. All is calm, and it is a glorious morning. My perfect moment. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. All has led up to this. This fog. It's as if a curtain fell. A damp, sodden curtain of rain that is not rain. A mass of hanging droplets sharpened that slash against me, soaking me. Rivers forming on my neck and down my back. Mist everywhere, blinding me, blocking out the sun in the channel beneath me. I don't know where I am. I'm alone inside of it. Somewhere in the sky. Alone, my hands on the controls and my ears filled with the roar of the engine. And I wipe the lenses of my goggles and I pull them up and look around myself, straining, and I still can't see. I dip a wing, struggling to peer beyond it. And as the wing drops, the engine stops. Silence. Just the whistle of the wind through the wing shrouds. Somewhere between heaven and earth, and much closer, it seems, to heaven. The carburetor, I realize, is flooded. Now truly I am alone. In a moment, the plane will begin to fall. It will fall, and I with it. First gradually, the plane's nose just tilting downward, and then faster now, ever downward, starting to spiral as now. I can't allow myself to think that. The engine will catch again, the wind will spin the prop, and the engine will start again. And I wait, falling. It starts. The engine comes to life and gives me life. I feel the surge of its pull, and I pull back on the stick, and we are rising now, slicing upward through the mist, because there must be an end of this somewhere. There must be light. If we just keep climbing, we'll find it. I know. Somewhere. We reach 5,000 feet, and we burst through. It's like diving from the water into the air, into the sunlight, above the clouds, the mist. My little plane and I, again, into the glorious morning. I look at my compass, and we are heading east. The wheels of my plane just above, sometimes touching the wisps of mist that stretch beneath. A darkened mist spreading before as far as I can see, like a meadow for I and my plane to fly above. The sunlight, blue sky, curves above. It's almost an hour now that we've been in the air. We should be over land. But what if the fog extends to the ground? We'll drop, descend until we hit. But then, even then, I would have succeeded. One last look around for me, for I feel like I could stay up here forever. And then I push the stick forward, and down we go, into the dark and stinging mist again, into a place I would never want to be, where in a seeming unending moment of dread, I fear there is no bottom. I won't hit earth or water. I and my plane will drop forever, day passing into endless night. Then there it is. The fog does end, and we are out beneath and above the whitest beach I have ever seen. I pass over, continue inland, past trees, tilled farmland, nowhere to land the plane. So I head back. Soon the beach stretches beneath me again. People stand waving. I pass over, settling downward, the beach rising up. Careful now, there might be a hole you don't want to wheel to, but no, we're fine, slowing. Look at that ocean, so beautiful. And we're almost stopped. I kill the engine, it rings in my ears. And then, as I think, we did it! I'm surrounded by a swarm of dark-clothed men and women, all laughing, shouting, speaking in French. I laugh too as they help me down. They're fishing and carry pails of bait worms. How elegant. They're from the village of Equehen, 30 miles from Calais. When I unbutton my coat, their faces show astonishment. Mauve pantaloons, they cry. They have never seen such as I, this spirit from the sky, dressed so outrageously. Then a woman steps forward and offers a cup of warm tea and bread and cheese. I thank her, rip a page from the newspaper at my chest, and write a note to Leo, Linda, and my friends. Have arrived at Equehen, France, Harriet Quimby. A boy runs off with it to the telegraph office. The crossing is over. There will be other channels, I know, if not of water, then of obstacle as cold and deep. But this one has been met and crossed. Isn't it odd what fate may bring? The Titanic was the largest ocean liner of its day. As I was preparing to cross the Channel from England to France, it was preparing to cross the Atlantic from England to New York. Had I flown sooner, I might have headed home on the Titanic. But that was not my fate. Mine was to fly the Channel the day after the Titanic sank.
It crashed into an iceberg. I crashed into the tragedy's publicity. Every day for weeks, the Titanic held the headlines. My good fortune, overwhelmed by the ship's misfortune, was relegated to the back pages. Even the London Mirror, which paid me $5,000 for the story.
With it, I purchased my 70-horsepower Blériot. It was all white, a beautiful single-wing aeroplane. Leo and I put it on a ship and came home. Home to the acclaim due to the first woman to fly the Channel, right? A parade or two, maybe? No. I returned to indifference and antagonism. Here's a newspaper quote about my flight. It proves ability and capacity, but it does not prove equality. Of course not. How dare I suggest that men and women might be equal? Events in my life moved quickly now, as if in a rush toward completion. Leo had announced that a promoter had offered me $100,000 to fly at an air show in Boston starting June 29th. I was to be the first woman to carry the U.S. mail, flying to New York City on the show's last day. Suddenly, everything was looking up. But then, Professor Huppert, remember my flight instructor, paid a visit.
You must quit, Huppert said to me. Because pilots were dying, even Mathilde Moissant, after a fiery crash, had promised not to fly again. No amount of money is worth this, he told me.
I agreed. No amount of money was worth it. But I wasn't doing it only for money. And not only for fame. The applause, the recognition, the love of the crowds, the way people's eyes lit up when they saw me, the letters, the adulation, the love. On second thought, maybe that was it. But with the professor, I insisted I was doing it only because I had chosen to. I had chosen to fly. Harvard Airfield was huge, with people milling everywhere. While planes circled above and balloons rose, bands played. Children walked around with wide eyes, their mothers carrying parasols, their fathers in dark suits and flat-brimmed straw boaters. These folks were leaving the horse and buggy era, entering the machine age. Amidst all this, I formulated a new challenge: to break the world above water speed record, 58 miles per hour. It's true that your fate can be decided by the flip of a coin. It's also true that the winner can lose. William Willard, the host of the air show, was a big man, 190 pounds. Though not a pilot, he had an enthusiasm for aeroplanes. When on that July 1st, the third day of the show, he and his son tossed a coin to decide who would ride with me. I had to laugh. Planes were flying everywhere, but both father and son wanted to ride with me. William won. Beaming, he climbed into the rear passenger seat. Due to William's weight behind me, my plane didn't require rear sandbags as ballast. But if William moved, Genevieve could tip. He said he understood. I tossed my cape to Leo, waved to the crowd. They whistled, cheered. Who wouldn't die for moments like this? My mechanics spun the propeller, a blast of noise and wind as the engine caught. Vibration shook the plane. I pulled down my goggles. White smoke rushed in my face. Even faster, the propeller spun. The men at the tail held tightly. I gave the gas, raised my thumb. The men let go, and Genevieve lurched away. I pulled back on the stick as we rose above the crowd, the faces below growing smaller, until soon we were high above, rushing toward Dorchester Bay. We flew past small islands. I pointed down at seagulls soaring and at sailboats cutting across the water. Evening sun was lowering, casting a path of golden light, sparkling in the waves. We rounded the lighthouse and began following the path of light home. 2,000 feet up in our little canvas plane. I looked back at William. He was ecstatic. So was I, knowing we would set the record. When we reached the shore, we looped the airfield at more than 70 miles an hour, sped back over the bay, then again toward the field. And then, to this moment, I'm not sure what happened. Did William stand up? Did we hit a pocket of air going too fast? Did Genevieve simply lose her balance? On the ground, all they could see was the plane's nose drop, the tail spring up, flinging William Willard aloft in an arc above and in front of me. And when he reached the apex, he began to fall. And as he fell, for a moment, our eyes locked. And for that moment, we held each other. But I could hold no one, for my arms were broken, smashed when I was thrown forward against the frame, and there was nothing I could do. I could not hold William or the controls or myself into the plane. All I could do was feel my plane roll over and watch as William dropped away from me. He had so wanted to fly. Now he fell from my vision, and the earth revolved. And when I was completely upside down, hanging for that last instant in the seat, I looked and saw only water. Then I fell, and the water was dark and spread out, it seemed, forever. And I saw as I fell a path of light across it from the sun. And you could say I fell into it, that sunlight. Sometimes I feel I'm still falling. Certainly, I fell away from the public, out of mind and memory. Other pilots came and died. Wars came, and with them advancements to aeronautics beyond all I had imagined, such as flying across oceans. I was forgotten. Unfortunate Harriet Quimby, people might say, if anyone remembered. But I wasn't unfortunate. I did what no woman had done, and I wouldn't trade my life for anyone's. I was Harriet Quimby, a name you never hear. America's first licensed female pilot. I flew the Channel. For that, you should remember me and for my courage.